So there's this topic that comes up like every now and then on Twitter where someone will be like, oh, tunneling is so evil, and then people try and counter the argument that tunneling is bad by being like, by explaining what gen rushing is and being like, see, it sounds silly when you turn it the opposite way and like do a survivor example done it. Like I just find it silly because like both of the arguments are stupid. Like, okay, so first of all, tunneling. My opinion on tunneling is going out of your way to tunnel someone at 5, 4, even 3, depending on the vibes, gens, is like ridiculous. Like, and I don't think it should be like reportable or like anything ridiculous, anything crazy like that. But I am gonna side eye people who do that because I just don't understand why like you need to do that. Like, it's like, I don't know, just don't do that. But then like if like the survivors are purposely taking hits or they're just in the wrong place at the wrong time and you end up tunneling, that's like a non-issue. It's not your problem. I do believe in like giving survivors a moment or two to, you know, pull themselves together. But if a survivor's in the wrong place at the wrong time, they're getting tunneled. Sorry, I'm not, you know, I'll be nice, but I won't be so nice that I'm gonna throw the game to avoid tunneling, you know what I mean? And then like also if we're at 1 or 2 gens, I'm probably gonna go out of my way to try and tunnel. And I think that's fine because it's okay to play to win. I just think thinking about survivors fun, an ounce is something that I am willing to do. And I know that going out of my way to tunnel at 4 or 5 gens just isn't something I need to do. So I typically don't do it unless the survivors are in the wrong place at the wrong time or are purposely trying to take hits and get in the way, you know? In terms of gen rushing, the thing about gen rushing is that it's not really real. Okay, well that's a lie. I think gen rushing, the only time gen rushing is real is when a survivor specifically has a build that caters to gen rushing. Stakeout, hyperfocus, fast track, deja vu. It's a great build. 1, 2, 3, 4 maybe could go in there. Swap out one of them. It's a great build. I use it every now and then. That is gen rushing. That's a gen rush build. It's not gen rushing for survivors to just do gens. If a killer chases a survivor for nearly like 3 or 4 full minutes and the other survivors get all 5 gens done, they weren't gen rushing, they were just doing the gens, and the killer wasn't keeping an eye on the gens because they were silly and committed to a chase for 5 minutes. That's not gen rushing, that's just doing the gens and the killer not putting a stop to it like they're supposed to. In terms of like if I think gen rush builds are like toxic or whatever, I don't care. I really don't care. Do what you want. Bring whatever build you want, you know. I hate pain res DMS. It makes me want to rip my hair out. But like, you can run that if you want. Like, who cares? I hate it, but do what you want. Okay, so now that we know like what I think these words mean. Actually, also in terms of tunneling, the amount of people who like have accused me of tunneling when they've not even been hooked twice in a row is crazy. Tunneling, by definition, you need to be hooked twice or 3 times in a row. The full tunnel is 3 times. Like, I would call it a mini tunnel if you're hooked twice in a row. But if you're like, if a killer is alternating between survivors, that's obviously not great for the team, but that's not tunneling. Like, it just isn't. Sorry. But yeah, okay, so now that we know what these words mean. The comparisons I see a lot are people compare tunneling to gen rushing and they're like, oh, you think tunneling is bad? Now let me explain gen rushing. You don't think that is bad, do you? So therefore it's silly to think tunneling is bad. But my thing with that is that they're just completely different things. So the thing to me about tunneling and gen rushing and why they just aren't comparable things is that survivors can get hooked 3 times and there is no removing those hooks. Obviously with like shoulder the burden, you can transfer a hook to someone, but those hooks are not leaving the game. They are there to stay. You're not removing that. But with gens, a killer can kick a gen could get to 99% 7 times and a killer can kick it 8 times and it could regress to literally nothing. Is that true? I might have just lied. No, I think that is true. I was thinking that like after a certain while the gen won't regress past a certain point, but I don't think that's true. I think a gen literally will regress all the way to 0 if it's left, and that it will do that 8 times, right? That to me is why gen rushing and tunneling are just not comparable. Once a hook state is in the game, it's in the game to stay. You're not removing that. But gens can go up and down, up and down, up and down a million times. So like I don't understand how the 2 things are comparable. And like I see the argument that if killers should go out of their way to avoid hooking people and avoid tunneling people, then obviously survivors should, you know, not do the gens and like do like what? That's the stupidest thing I've heard in my life. I don't know, I honestly don't know where I'm going with this. I just really need it known that tunneling and Genrushing are just not the same. Genrushing is barely even real. Obviously, as killer, it's frustrating when you're in a chase and like suddenly you hear like 2 gens pop at once, or like the gens are just flying, but that's like partially that's on you, bro. Like, you know, sometimes you have a bad match and you don't get the downs quick enough, and sometimes the gens are gonna pop. That doesn't mean the survivors are toxic gen rushers. It just means you weren't on top of the gens and they got them done, because that's the objective. And like, that's another thing where people are like, well, getting kills is the objective, so I'm just getting kills by tunneling at 5 gens. And it's like, right, okay, like, right, yeah. Like, honestly, I don't know what to say to that, because like it's true, but I can't like just you can't explain empathy. Do you know what I mean? Like, when I'm playing as killer, I'm aware that the survivors also queued in for a match. I'm aware the survivors also want a fun game. So yeah, I'm not gonna go out of my way at 5 gens to tunnel, because why would I do that? The game would be over quicker. The survivors will probably start giving up because one of their teammates is dead at 5 gens. So I'm like, I'll dish them out, you know, I'll spread them out a bit, right? If I can. Obviously, if we get down to like 2 gens, I've got barely any hooks, I'm gonna kill someone, because my, like, the survivor's enjoyment doesn't go above the fact that I'm playing for myself and I want to win, ideally. But like, sorry, I think of other people. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like, I don't know what to say other than that. Like, is it obvious that this isn't scripted and I'm just waffling? Because like, I just don't, like, Genrushing's not a problem. Tunneling also isn't always a problem. And it's like, the argument of killers are just doing the objective and killing people faster versus, well, instead of like doing the gens, what do you want us to do? It's like, when people tell you not to tunnel, they're telling you to go after a different survivor and still do your objective, but in a different way, by not tunneling instead of tunneling. But if someone says, okay, don't gen rush, like, what do you want the survivors to do then? You want them to just not do the objective at all. People who say don't tunnel aren't saying don't do your objective, they're saying do your objective, but maybe just like think about the order you're hooking survivors. Think about when you tunnel. Like, a lot of matches require tunneling to win, and that's fine. No one, I mean, no sane person is saying don't tunnel literally ever. Like, tunnel when you need to. Get the win. If tunneling is how you get the win by doing that, then that's fine. It's not comparable. Don't tunnel and don't gen rush. They're not comparable, like, things. Like, they're not the survivor and killer versions of each other, right? Because to tell a survivor not to gen rush, okay, what do they do then? Open a chest? Do a totem? That's not the objective. For killers, telling them not to tunnel, you're still telling them to do the objective, but just do it in a different way. For survivors, you'd be saying, just don't do the objective at all. Actually, don't do the objective. Just let the killer catch up a bit, actually. And that's ridiculous. It's on the killer to get the hooks, manage the gens. If you're sinking 4 minutes into your first chase, yeah, you're gonna lose a bunch of gens if the survivors have brains and know what they're doing. Because you just can't do that. That's just common sense, that you can't just sink 4 minutes into your first chase. Or any chase, really. Like, any chase shouldn't be that long. And you need to, like, reprioritize and check gens. It's not on the survivors to stop the gens because you've been on a chase for a bit too long and haven't quite got your hooks yet. It's on you to pivot your priorities and be like, okay, this chase has been going on for too long, I need to switch, I need to check a gen because it might pop soon, and I'll chase someone else and hopefully I'll get them faster. And if you don't do that, then tunnel. Like, yeah, obviously, like, do that, that's fine. Hello. But yeah, the point I'm trying to make is that I just think comparing tunneling and gen rushing is very silly, because they're not the same and the effects are very different. Tunneling, hooks are in the game no matter what. You can't remove a hook. You can transfer it to someone else, but a hook will always be in the game. Gen rushing, the progress people get on gens can be regressed completely 8 times over on every single gen. That's not the same as dishing out hooks that are permanent. It's not the same. Does that make any sense? Gen rushing's not real, guys. I don't know what to say. It just isn't real. Unless someone specifically has a gen rush build, in which case, yeah, gen rushing is real, but who cares? Sometimes I've had gen rush builds where I've got 0 value. Like, because the killer was a stealth killer, or I just was shit at the game, or I just was in chase for more of the game than I was on gens, and I just didn't get value from it. The same way, sometimes killers don't get value from their hex perks, or like whatever else, right? Like, this isn't to say that things don't need to change with the game, you know. I think one thing worth changing is the benefit of doubling up on a gen. Like, we recently got a Dustin perk where I think doubling up on gens makes you faster, which is crazy to me, and I think doubling up on a gen should be less efficient than it already is, because I think making the base speed a generator moves will just make things go on for way too long. But if you can just make a few things less efficient, or like encourage killers to not tunnel, or like just do like a few things to tweak the game, that would be great. But for the most part, even without those changes, like, gen rushing's not real. Tunneling is fine sometimes and a bit embarrassing other times. I don't think if you hard tunnel me at 5 gens, I'm not gonna think you're an evil person, but I am gonna be like, oh, why'd you do that? It's a bit silly. Like, that's a bit embarrassing. But yeah, in conclusion, comparing tunneling and gen rushing makes you look dumb. Because they're not the same at all. They're not comparable. They're just not. They're very different things, actually.